Now joining us on the broadcast today on this is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former Joint Secretary to Sri Lanka. Sir, first of all, a very warm welcome to DD India News. Whatever happened in Sri Lanka after Cyclone Ditwah is very sad. A lot of lives lost and many others injured. But with Operation Sagar Bandhu, India has left no stone unturned to make sure that the humanitarian aid reaches there at the earliest. How do you see this?
Thank you very much, Siddharth, for having me on your show. I want to begin by saying that India's overall strategic objective in the Indian Ocean, but in the neighborhood, is to be a net security provider. That's the first objective.
Right.
The second is to be a first responder in terms of disaster and humanitarian assistance. And I think India has done it much more than substantially when it comes to Sri Lanka. I want to tell your viewers that I was posted in Sri Lanka as Deputy High Commissioner before becoming Joint Secretary Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And on a December, when I was sitting at home on a Sunday, I got a call from the then President of Sri Lanka, Chandrika Kumaratunga, saying that there are enormous floods in Trincomalee. We don't know what it is, and we would like the Indian relief to come as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And the High Commissioner was temporarily on consultation duty in Delhi. So what I did was, with the defense attaché, we were able to get a plane full of relief by that day in the evening. Okay. So that was the beginning of a long history. Of course, what I'm talking about is the tsunami in 2004. And since then, India has had a tremendous record of being the first responder to Sri Lanka, whether it is a humanitarian disaster, whether it is black swan event like COVID, or a financial economic crisis in 2022 when we gave $4 billion. And now, of course, you've got this Operation Sagar Bandhu. So I wanted to situate India's unconditional commitment for being the net security provider, being the first responder, and generally being committed to a neighborhood where we can share our expertise and try and be a neighbor who's a friend in need. And I think that is something we have done consistently over time when it comes to Sri Lanka.
Sir, any other incident would you like to share with us? Since you just shared us about the incident on one Sunday.
No, this is exactly what I'm saying. So when it comes to the tsunami, for example, what we did was we established a war room, and we got so much support from the Defense Ministry in India that we were able to actually reach a plane that very night in Colombo.
Right.
And that can happen only if India is in a permanent state of readiness. And I think it is to the credit of our armed forces, our Navy. You see, what we have done in the past and what we are doing now is actually operations by sea and operations by air.
Right.
These are the ways in which Sri Lanka can be assisted. And I think the Sri Lankan political leadership across the spectrum know that they can rely on India. And that's a big change, because in the minds of Sri Lanka, there was also the unfortunate intervention of the Indian peacekeeping force, and we dropped dal on Jaffna and so on and so forth. But that is now such a distant memory. The recent memories are of a country which is standing by Sri Lanka shoulder to shoulder, whether it is, like I said, tsunami. What about the oil spills that happened with Sri Lankan ships in the Indian Ocean? Again, the Indian Navy sprung to action. So I can give you a number of instances where I think India has come to the help of Sri Lanka. It's a way of indicating to Sri Lanka that you can rely on us. It's also a way of interpreting the space that India and Sri Lanka occupy in the Indian Ocean, considering it as a common space when it comes to disaster. You cannot consider them as individual countries when there is a disaster, because when there is a transnational disaster, no country is spared. So there is no point in looking at borders. You will have to look at it as a common geopolitical, geo-economic space where countries will have to help each other. And I believe India has stood by Sri Lanka through thick and thin. And that should serve us well even in our relationship with Sri Lanka.
Definitely. Let's talk about neighborhood policy, India's neighborhood policy. Sir, how crucial is this policy in your assessment?
Well, I would say that this is yet another illustration of neighborhood first policy.
Yeah.
Actually, you will recall that the Prime Minister Modi's government talks of neighborhood first. And what better way to be a neighbor than to respond first, be the first to respond when it comes to a crisis. So, as I said, we've done this systematically over time. And what you do is you build the bonds of neighborhood much better. This is in my view, way more important than giving a country a $1 million line of credit. That's important. That's important in itself. But this is so much more important because you save lives, you save destruction of property, you are helping with two things. One, humanitarian relief like tents and like materials for emergency. You've got blankets, you've got mattresses, all of those
A lot of
things.
things. Yeah, definitely a lot of things. I quickly want to ask you, sir, how do you see this policy from the security and economic point of view?
I would see it from climate security and a geopolitical security, if you like. I don't see it in terms of traditional security of supplying Sri Lanka or Bangladesh with weapons. There are other countries, and I don't want to name them. Other countries do that. You supply weapons, you supply missiles, you supply guns. I think what India does in terms of being a net security provider is the physical security, the human security, the climate security, sustainable development security. And to me, it seems that security, the geopolitical security, the non-traditional forms of security are much more important than just weapons and missiles that you can supply to a neighbor. So it is in those terms that I say that India's fundamental objective of being a net security provider in the Indian Ocean and the neighborhood is being fulfilled as we speak through operations like Operation Sagar Bandhu.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in on the broadcast today. Thank you so much.